Hello, this is Patrick at OneCNC West, and what we're going to do in this training video is continue to apply toolpath to our turning project. In this video, we're going to focus on C-axis work. In fact, we're going to be machining these 3 notches on the side of the part. Now, the first thing to do is to create the geometry. Remember, when applying toolpath, typically within OneCNC, you're going to be applying toolpath to wireframe geometry when you're using the stock toolpaths. Anything like pocketing, profiling, facing, and things like that. Now, for good housekeeping, I suggest creating a brand new layer for this new geometry. To do that, we're going to head down to the lower right-hand corner, right-hand mouse click within the layer browser, and select Add Layer. Now, by default, the layer is called Layer 1. Let's rename that. I'm going to double-click on Layer 1. And now we have the opportunity to rename this. Why don't we call this layer Notches? I think that looks good, so we'll click OK to that. Now, with this layer highlighted, that means that any geometry I create now is going to be placed on this layer. Let's head back over to the Command Manager. I'm going to select the Home button, and from there, let's go into Model Tools. We're going to use this option called Extract an Edge. Going to take the cursor and I'm just going to hover over that inside edge of one of the notches and left click. Let's do the same with the remaining notches. Just take your cursor, hover over the edge and left click. Let's do that one more time. Hover over the edge, left hand click, and when you're done, right hand mouse click. Now, because this layer was highlighted, the notches layer, those 3 lines have been created on that layer. We can verify that by turning off the main spindle layer just by left-clicking on that little green eye. And there you go. You can see there's the geometry. All right, let's start to apply the toolpath now. We're going to head back over to the Command Manager, and this time, instead of selecting the Home button, I'm going to take the shortcut by directly going into our model toolpaths, just by left-clicking this icon, just like that. Now, we can use any one of these profile operations, but to keep things simple, why don't we use the Mill Profile Basic? I'm going to left click that, and the first thing we need to do is select the geometry that we'd like to apply the toolpath to. So I'm going to take my cursor and hover over the end of the line where I'd like to start my toolpath. I want a climb cut, so I'm going to make sure I select this end of the line and not this end. So I'm going to left click. Once we do that, we're provided with 4 arrows. These arrows determine the side and the direction of cut. Well, I want a climb cut on the outside, so I'm going to left click that arrow. Now I have the opportunity to select the end of geometry. If I had multiple shapes, I could select the end of the geometry. In this case, it's just one shape, one entity, so I can right hand mouse click. Once I do that, notice how the cursor changes from the word end to start. Now I can repeat the process on the remaining 2 lines. I'm going to left click the arrow, and then right hand mouse click. Let's do the same down here. Let's left click the arrow, and when we're done, we can right hand mouse click. Now that we're finished selecting all of the lines, we can right hand mouse click one more time. That tells OneCNC that we're done selecting all of the geometry. Now, just like with our turning operations, the very first dialog box is where we define a tool. When performing turn operations, you're required to select a tool from the tool library. However, with milling operations, with live tooling, you can actually create the geometry on the fly, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to place this in turret position number 4. For the RPM, we're using 3800. And notice how we have 2 feed rates. Now for live axis tooling, the first feed rate is the feed rate that gets applied along the cut direction. The plunge feed rate is the feed rate that's going to be used as the tool approaches the geometry. So I have 30 inches a minute and 15 inches here. We have polar coordinate mode on and off. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but for right now we're going to leave that set to off. For the tool holder, you can left hand click and you can select any type of holder that you'd like. For this example, I'm going to be using the 1/2 inch side lock. That looks good, so I'll click OK. For the overall length of the tool, that's how far the tool sticks out of the holder, I'm going to increase this to 2 inches. Notice when I do that, the graphics over here on the left dynamically update. Now for the flute length, that's represented by the gold here. I'm going to also increase that as well. Let's change that to 1 inch 750 thousandths. I'm happy with the diameter of 5/8, which is 625 thousandths. By the way, you can type in a fraction if you'd like. Let me demonstrate. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to type in 5/8. As soon as I do that, I can hit the equal sign on the keyboard, and OneCNC will convert that fraction into the decimal equivalent. Very good. All right, let's click Next on this. Now we have our clearances and depths. The first thing we want to take a look at is the rapid Z-plane. This is simply the level that the tool is going to move to as it moves in between notches. In other words, in between cuts. 200 thousandths is fine. And remember, 200 thousandths is going to be measured from X0, Y0, Z0, which is right here. 200 thousandths is fine for that. The plunge clearance, that's the amount that the tool is going to move as it approaches the geometry. For this, I have 50 thousandths. Material top, that's going to be 0. Again, that's recorded or relative to the X0, Y0, Z0. And for the Z depth, or final Z, I have minus 2 inches, 225 thousandths. Now, by the way, if you don't know the value of this, let me just type in anything here. You can also use this option called Pick Z. Once I select Pick Z, I can take my cursor and I can select any endpoint on the geometry. OneCNC will extrapolate that depth and place it within the dialog box. Very nice. So we're going to be using minus 2 inches, 250 thousandths. Let's click Next on that. We don't need to ramp profile on this. We're going to be taking the cuts at one level. So we're going to be using cut levels. That looks good. Let's click Next on that. We don't need to worry about auto step over. That's if we're going to be taking lots of concentric roughing passes. We don't need that for right now, so we can ignore this. I am going to leave 0 on the sides because for this example, this is just going to be a finish pass. That looks good. Don't need to worry about a wall taper because there is none, and we'll click Next on that. I don't need an extra finish pass, so I have this set to none. We'll click Next on that. And then here's the lead in and lead out styles. This controls how we approach the geometry and how we exit the geometry. For this part, or for this toolpath, I'm going to be using the option called Line, Line. We're going to be approaching in a linear fashion and exiting the profile in a linear fashion as well. I'm going to say the lead-in length, why don't we expand that a little bit more to how about 400 thousandths? And for the lead-in angle, I'm going to type in 0. That simply means that the toolpath is going to continue along the vector of cut without altering the angle. So lead-in angle, 0. Now the exit values work exactly the same way. We could type in those values here, or if you click the triple chevron button up here, it will populate your exit values to equal your entry values. I think all that looks good, so let's click Finish and let OneCNC generate the toolpath. Very good. Now if we take a look over here within the NC Manager, you can see that we have a brand new machining operation called Profile Basic. Notice also that it has the token of C-axis applied to the left side there. That way we can easily identify any type of multi-axis machining. That looks good. Why don't we turn our main spindle layer back on and let's preview our toolpath. I'm going to right-hand mouse click on the Profile Basic command and select Preview Toolpath. Alright, so we can see the tool approaching the notch. It's starting 400 thousandths away, machining the notch, going past 400 thousandths, rapiding up to 200 thousandths above the part. Remember, that was our Z clearance level of 200 thousandths. Going to approach the notch, machine the notch, and then wrap it back up again. Very good. Let's take a look at the final notch here. Tool rapids to position, starts 400 thousandths before, machines the notch, and then pulls back out again. All right, that's it for this training video. In the next video, we're going to expand a little bit more on the Z-axis machining and also take a look at simulating toolpath. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.